Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Parallel Deku. Back with another fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Was Trained by the Green Arrow? Now before starting, please give this video a like. And subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku always dreamed of becoming a hero, wanting to be like his idol, the #1 hero All Might. However, being quirkless made him a target for ridicule, forcing him to confront the harsh reality that he might never achieve his dream. Despite this, Izuku remained determined, refusing to give up and always moving forward, regardless of what others said. "We're leaving early today, huh?" he said, reaching for his notebook to put it in his bag when suddenly someone snatched it away. "What's this? My future?" Haha. Katsuki laughed, accompanied by his two friends, as he set off a small explosion that singed the notebook before tossing it out the window and into the pond. Hey! Izuku yelled, looking out the window. "Listen up, that. Do yourself a favor and don't apply for UA, got it?" Katsuki threatened, igniting tiny explosions in his palm. "But let me give you a bit of advice on how to become a hero," he said, crouching slightly to look at Izuku. "Why don't you jump off a building and pray you have a quirk in your next life?" With that, Katsuki turned to leave, laughing with his friends, bumping Izuku's shoulder as he passed, causing him to stumble slightly. Izuku was used to this treatment, enduring it almost every day, but even he felt that Katsuki had gone too far this time. "Idiot, what if I really hurt myself? That would mean you instigated it," he muttered to himself. As the day came to an end, Izuku prepared to head home. He felt bad after Katsuki's bullying, but now he felt utterly miserable after his encounter with All Might. Almost losing his life to the sludge villain aside, he couldn't help but shed a tear as he recalled All Might's words, "Can one become a hero even without a quirk? I should think not. It's not bad to dream, but we must also be realistic." Izuku had never felt more miserable in his life. For a brief moment, he considered Katsuki's advice about jumping off a building, but quickly dismissed it, knowing it wouldn't solve anything and would only create more problems. "What do I do now?" Izuku thought. He had always had a singular focus, to be a hero. But right now, he felt lost, with no clear path ahead. Snapping back to reality, he realized he had bumped into someone and unconsciously apologized before noticing he had wandered into a hero versus villain scene. He chuckled to himself, "What am I doing?" It dawned on him that he had given up. Just as he was about to walk away, he caught a glimpse of the victim. It was Katsuki, being attacked by the sludge villain. Izuku froze, realizing that Katsuki must have escaped while he was distracting All Might. Katsuki was his bully and had caused him a lot of grief, but he was still the closest thing Izuku had to a friend. If he was ever going to become a hero, it would be now. Izuku pushed through the crowd and leaped over the barricades, recalling the strategies he had written in his notebooks. Just as Katsuki was about to drown, Izuku threw his bag at the sludge villain's eyes, giving Katsuki a few precious seconds to breathe. "Deku, what are you doing?" Katsuki shouted. "You look like you needed help." Izuku replied, desperately trying to pull Katsuki free. Unbeknownst to them, All Might was watching from the corner of the street. Inspired by Izuku's bravery and frustrated with himself, he broke through his limits and activated One for All once more. Knowing he only had a few seconds left in his muscular form, he quickly dispatched the villain with a powerful punch. The crisis was over, and All Might had saved the day once again. Katsuki was surrounded by heroes who praised him for his quirk, while Izuku faced a lecture for his reckless actions. As he walked home, Izuku reflected on the day's events. After much thought, he concluded that All Might's words were probably true. He might have saved Katsuki's life, but he couldn't even save his own. He would have perished if All Might hadn't intervened. For the first time in a long while, Izuku felt something unfamiliar, a desire to give up. He had always tried his best to become a hero, even without a quirk, never letting anything bring him down, not even the constant bullying. But now, faced with the reality that he might never become a hero, he felt devastated. He wanted to cry but found himself unable to, staring blankly at the alleyway ahead. After several attempts to cry, he gave up and started walking home when suddenly, Someone grabbed his shoulder. Izuku flinched and stepped back, trying to recognize the person. The man facing him was tall, with blonde crew-cut hair, wearing a black suit and a checkered green tie. Izuku had seen him before but couldn't quite place him. "Hi, you're Izuku, am I right?" "I'm Oliver Queen," the man said, extending a hand for a handshake. Izuku's eyes widened as he remembered who this man was. Oliver Queen, the third richest man in the world, was standing before him. Hesitantly, Izuku accepted the handshake, wondering why such a prominent figure would talk to him. "I saw what happened back there," Oliver said. Izuku looked down, bracing himself for the same scolding he expected from the heroes. But as he listened, bracing for another harsh comment, he heard something he never thought he'd hear. "What you did was very heroic." Izuku instantly looked at Oliver with a surprised expression. "I know that you are quirkless, but I believe you can become a wonderful hero." In that moment, Izuku realized that these were the exact words he had longed to hear from someone his entire life. To say that Izuku shed a tear was an understatement. He was sobbing as he knelt on the floor before the man who had spoken words he desperately needed to hear. He barely knew this man, yet he had fulfilled a significant part of his dreams, having someone believe in him. A few minutes later, Oliver and Izuku decided to talk in a nearby park. It was 6:30 p.m., and although it was dark, silhouettes of the trees were still visible. "Listen, Izuku, I want you to apply for UA and become a hero," Oliver said. This once again shocked Izuku. Not long ago, he had given up hope, yet here was Oliver telling him otherwise. Izuku looked hopeful for a moment but then glanced down as reality hit him. "But I don't have a quirk," he said, tears welling in his eyes as he remembered this harsh truth. In contrast, Oliver grinned as he gazed at the moon. "Do you know the green arrow?" Izuku was unsure how this related to them, but he did know the green arrow. In fact, he recalled spending an entire night researching him, like the nerd he was. The green arrow was a vigilante, one of the greatest, ranked number 1 for 5 consecutive years on the vigilante list. He had evaded the police and heroes 32 times before he disappeared. Some said he died, others believed he was injured in his escape from the number 2 hero, Endeavor. Something told Izuku that Mr. Queen knew more than he let on. "Why, yeah, I know him. He was the top vigilante for 5 years on online forums," Izuku said, leaning closer, curious about what Oliver knew. Oliver grinned before saying, "Well, he was actually quirkless, just like you." Izuku woke up the next morning feeling surprisingly refreshed despite the events of the previous day. His mother didn't ask too many questions, and everything went rather well. He ate his breakfast and brushed his teeth before leaving for school. On his way, he heard the commotion of a hero versus villain incident happening a few blocks away. Normally, he would have rushed to the scene, but after yesterday, Izuku thought it would be too much for him to handle, at least for now. The day went by relatively normally after he arrived, except for the fact that Katsuki wasn't talking to him. There were a few questions about the incident here and there, but overall, things felt routine. Izuku hadn't forgotten, though. In fact, it never left his mind. "Today I start my training," he said to himself as he walked to the place Oliver had told him to go after classes. As Izuku walked, he noticed the area slowly transforming into what he called a bad neighborhood. When he finally arrived, he hesitated at the entrance. Is this really it? He wondered. No one could blame him. What he was looking at was a nightclub. Izuku had many questions about why a nightclub was the training location. Why couldn't it be an abandoned warehouse like where the movie vigilantes lived? Carefully, he made his way inside. The club appeared empty, and everything from the tables to the flooring looked like it cost a fortune. "I guess he's not rich for nothing," he thought. After looking around for a while, he decided to check the back of the building but quickly stopped as he sensed something odd. The atmosphere of the room shifted, reminiscent of the moments before a jump scare in a video game. Suddenly, a stick hurtled toward him. He barely managed to dodge, landing on his backside instead. A man in a hoodie stood before him. Izuku wondered why he found himself in yet another life-or-death situation after just escaping one the day before, but he quickly dismissed the thought as he scrambled to his feet. He had 2 choices, run or fight. With the only escape route blocked by this attacker, Izuku felt truly at a loss. "Good job dodging, kid," the hooded man said. Izuku flinched as he recognized the voice and thought, oh, realizing who the man was. The man removed his hood, revealing himself to be Oliver Queen, aka the Arrow. Izuku wondered why he hadn't recognized him sooner. It was pretty obvious now that he thought about it. "You have good instincts and reflexes," Oliver said. "But you need to work on your balance and mentality." He faced Izuku again. "Are you ready for the first day of training?" Izuku's face lit up with excitement. He was more than ready, he was brimming with enthusiasm. As he followed Oliver to the training room, he bombarded him with questions. "Am I going to learn martial arts?" "Yes, you are." "Is it kung fu?" "Oh, maybe ninjutsu?" Izuku exclaimed, his face filled with anticipation. Oliver could only smirk at his reaction. "No. But you are going to learn something called eskrima." He handed a stick to each of Izuku's hands. Being the nerd that he was, Izuku already knew what eskrima was. If watching hero movies was his job, then watching martial arts films was his side gig. He had even seen movies from a century ago, starring legends like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. Izuku grinned at the thought of possibly being able to enter the dragon. Maybe Oliver could teach him how to use nunchucks. This reminded him of something. Speaking of weapons, he knew he would have to learn how to use one, but if he was supposed to become the Arrow, shouldn't he be learning that first? Izuku was intrigued by the idea of using a bow and arrow to shoot targets hundreds of yards away. "How about the bow and arrow?" he suggested, glancing at Oliver. "I'll get to that, but first, let me show you something," Oliver replied, gesturing for Izuku to follow him. As they passed through a large metal door into the Arrow Cave, Izuku was amazed by the secret base. The high-tech devices and computers were impressive, but what truly caught his eye were the 3 costumes displayed in glass cases. He stared in awe at the sight. "You're not getting one just yet, Izuku," Oliver said, as if reading his thoughts. Izuku flinched, realizing that was exactly what he had been thinking. "I know. It's just that they look so cool," he admitted, rubbing the back of his head. Looking at the other 2 costumes, he immediately recognized them as Red Arrow and Black Canary, 2 of the top vigilantes. The police speculated that Black Canary worked with Arrow, but it was never confirmed. As for Red Arrow, their partnership was obvious. Izuku couldn't help but wonder where they were now. He considered asking Oliver but decided against it, feeling it wasn't something he needed to know just yet. On the opposite side of the room was a large table filled with an impressive array of weapons, everything one might expect in an action movie. Blunt weapons, sharp weapons, and even some firearms caught Izuku's eye. His heart raced as he spotted shurikens, something every aspiring ninja dreams of using. The handguns were clearly military grade, and in the center of it all was a bow displayed on a small pedestal. Just as Izuku leaned in for a better look, Oliver swiftly picked it up, reminding him that Oliver had something to show him. Oliver placed the bow on a nearby table before removing his prosthetic arm. Izuku was startled for a moment until he remembered it was just a prosthetic. Oliver replaced it with another arm that glowed blue at the hinges. "Why did you change it?" Izuku asked, curiosity piqued, though he had a rough idea. "Because this arm can sync with my movements like a real arm," Oliver explained. "But it comes with challenges. It can cause phantom pain, takes time to calibrate, and if I push it too hard, it overheats and my movements lag. If that happens during a fight, it could be disastrous." After calibrating for a while, Oliver took the bow and strapped on a quiver filled with arrows. 6 tennis balls randomly in front of him, each one creating an arc as it flew from one side to the other. In a fluid motion, Oliver shot 6 arrows, each one striking a tennis ball and pinning it to the nearby wall. Izuku was stunned. He knew Oliver was a master archer, but witnessing his skill up close was incredible. "Are you sure you don't have a quirk?" Izuku asked, genuinely curious. It seemed impossible to achieve what Oliver just did without some sort of enhancement. Oliver chuckled softly. "Wielding a bow takes patience and discipline. I'm going to teach you martial arts first as a foundation before showing you how to use one properly." "And yes," I said, "properly, because I don't want you to base it on any movie you might have seen." Izuku winced at this. Once again, Oliver seemed to know what he was thinking. "Listen, Izuku," Oliver said in a serious tone, prompting Izuku to pay closer attention. "I know we agreed on this yesterday, but the next few months of training will be tougher than anything you've faced before. I want you to know there's no shame in backing out." Izuku appreciated the offer of an easy way out, but his resolve remained firm. "Thank you, but my mind hasn't changed. I want to train." Oliver nodded, a smile breaking across his face. "I knew you wouldn't back down. Also, call me Ollie or Oliver, just drop the san. I'm not used to it." "Okay, let's get started. Get your sticks into guard position." That concludes my training arc. I know it's short, but I'm not that good at writing training arcs, and I doubt you want to read about training. Maybe I'll include some flashbacks though. Until next time. Thud, ouch. "Come on, Izuku, the exam is in 3 weeks, and you barely know how to counter," Oliver said as he returned to his stance after throwing Izuku to the ground. "It's because you always counter my counters," Izuku exclaimed as he quickly got back up and charged at Oliver, aiming to grapple his lower body. But Oliver anticipated this move, sidestepped at the last second, and grabbed Izuku's collar, putting him in a hold. Izuku struggled to breathe and realized he had only one option left. He tapped the floor 3 times, signaling his surrender. "Not bad, almost didn't see that last counter," Oliver said, helping Izuku to his feet. "You're almost as good as me now." "That's a joke, right?" Izuku replied while stretching his arms. "It's been 9 months. Have a little faith in yourself." "Well, you had 5 years. That's a bit unfair." Oliver chuckled lightly. The past 9 months had been quite hectic for him. It was the first time he had a disciple. He had taught Izuku more than just how to fight. He taught him how to talk his way out of any situation and even some mechanical skills for fixing and making weapons. He had even given Izuku a connection to the Russian mob for emergencies. Oliver felt a sense of pride in Izuku. He reminded him of Roy. Fair enough, it's time for bow and arrow training. Both of them grabbed their respective bows when suddenly Oliver heard 2 beeps. "The batteries are almost dead," Oliver said, glancing at his robotic arm. "And apparently, I have a meeting in half an hour." "That's all right, Oliver. I can practice on my own." Oliver hesitated for a moment before agreeing. "Well, all right, but when I come back, I want those targets to have an arrow each. 15 laps around the building every time you miss a bullseye." Izuku chuckled at the 15 laps part before responding, "Just go, will ya?" Oliver then exited the building, likely heading off to another meeting. Izuku made his way to the nearby abandoned building that Oliver had refurbished into a training area. He wasn't as skilled with the bow and arrow as Oliver, but he wasn't exactly average either. 25 targets were scattered throughout the building, and there were 25 arrows in Izuku's quiver. Perfect. He kicked the door open while drawing his bow and hit the first target the moment it opened. Dodging a trap arrow that Oliver had set beforehand by rolling to the side, he hit the target located near the trap. He flinched as he saw the arrow he had just dodged firmly planted in the wall. That could have been dangerous, Izuku exclaimed, wondering how he had survived the last 9 months of intense training. Shaking off the thought, he continued searching for the remaining targets. By the time he finished, Izuku had hit all 25 targets in less than 10 minutes, and of course, all were bullseyes. Izuku took off his training gear and put on his jacket. "I have time to spare. Guess I'll go for a walk." He locked the door and exited the building. The base was located in a rough neighborhood, but Izuku had gotten used to it and even made a few connections here and there. It felt like he was becoming a vigilante, but he never forgot his ultimate goal, to be a hero. As he walked around, greeting a few people, he found himself wandering into an empty alleyway. This part of the city was almost devoid of people. It wasn't unusual to find an empty alley, but this particular one was not so empty. "Hand it over, lady, or I'll blow your brains out," a man shouted, pointing a gun at a girl's head. A classic robbery was unfolding before Izuku's eyes. He quickly knelt down, realizing the man hadn't noticed him yet. Izuku cursed himself for not bringing any weapons, but he might not need any after all. This guy probably doesn't have a powerful quirk if he needs a gun to threaten someone. Even if his quirk is impressive but not combat-oriented, I could probably handle it. Still, It would be safer if I had a weapon. Izuku thought, spotting the perfect makeshift weapon nearby. Hey, I don't think it's very polite to point that at someone's head, Izuku said calmly, approaching slowly, just as Oliver had taught him. Stay out of this, kid, or I'll blow your brains out too, the thug warned, aiming the gun at Izuku. Oh, you think that gun can pierce my quirk? Izuku bluffed as he moved closer. The man hesitated for a moment. Seizing the opportunity, Izuku quickly grabbed the man's wrist, dodging the bullet by mere inches, and swiftly took the gun from him. Pointing the gun back at the man, Izuku noticed the thug panicking. The man activated his quirk, and a sharp object protruded from his wrist, resembling a lion's fang, though to Izuku, it didn't seem sharp enough to be a real threat. Before the man could react further, Izuku executed a swift kick that landed squarely on the man's chin, knocking him out almost instantly. Seeing the man unconscious, Izuku took the chance to tie him up with a rope he conveniently found nearby. My first vigilante act, huh? Well, I can't just stand by and watch. Speaking of which, are you okay, ma'am? Izuku asked, offering a hand to the woman who was sitting in the alleyway, clearly frightened. The woman looked at Izuku and hugged him tightly, sobbing on his shoulder. Thank you. You're a real hero. Izuku could only smile at her remark. After turning the man over to the nearby police station, registering the events as self-defense, and escorting the girl to the nearby bus station, Izuku returned to the hideout. As he opened the door to the base, he was greeted by a kick. Izuku's sharpened senses kicked in, allowing him to dodge by weaving downwards. Nice dodging, Izuku. Could you not greet your student with a kick? It shows you've been training, so it's fine. So where have you been? You look like something happened to you. Ignoring the thought of whether Oliver was psychic or not, Izuku decided to share the events that had just occurred. After hearing Izuku's story, a brief silence fell over them. Izuku hadn't shown it lately because of how Oliver was training him to communicate, but Oliver knew he was still the anxious boy he always was, so he decided to console him. So, what do you have in mind? No heroes came today. If I hadn't been there, who knows what would have happened to that woman? Izuku looked at Oliver, searching for an answer. Are you saying you don't want to be a hero anymore? I'm saying maybe I should just be a vigilante. Oliver had anticipated this development. Every student at some point would likely want to emulate his master. It was only natural for Izuku to feel this way. Heroes these days mostly do it for the fame and fortune. That's why no one wants to be in the less populated areas, Oliver stated, knowing this would push Izuku to think deeper. Then. But before Izuku could finish, Oliver spoke over him. But that's exactly why you need to become a hero, right? If no one is doing the right thing, then be the first to do it. That way, you can inspire others to follow suit. Izuku looked at Oliver as if he had just found the answer to his questions, then gazed up at the ceiling. You're right, Oliver. Sorry for being foolish. Oliver nodded. As long as you understand. Oh, by the way, I got this from that guy I took down, Izuku said as he handed over the handgun to Oliver. Izuku, do you know what this is? Oliver asked after inspecting the gun. Yeah, it's a Glock 19 loaded with 9mm bullets, military grade. That means someone has been smuggling weapons and arming the streets. Oliver nodded, pleased that Izuku was already so knowledgeable about these matters. Yes, but the weapons aren't the main issue. Quirks are more powerful than these firearms. The real concern is that they can smuggle military-grade weapons even while pro-heroes, police, and we are watching the city. Who knows what else they might be bringing in? Izuku pondered how they could be doing it and who might be behind it before coming to a realization. It's them, isn't it? The Villain Alliance. Oliver stared at the wall with a fierce intensity, as if it were his enemy. Probably. They're up to something big. Noticing that Izuku had adopted the same fierce expression, Oliver decided to intervene in his thoughts again. But that doesn't concern you yet. You need to focus on the entrance exams first, got that? Izuku chuckled. Okay. I need to go home now and study. Alright, be careful on your way home, and say hi to your mom for me. Will do. Izuku replied as he stepped out the door. When Izuku reached his house, he was immediately greeted by his mother. I'm home, Mom. Welcome back, Izuku. He had told his mom a few months ago that he started training martial arts under a master. Inko Midoriya was quite proud of her son for still striving to be a hero despite being quirkless and gave him her full support. That was just the kind of mother Inko was. How was training, dear? It's going great, Mom, Izuku answered with a smile. After dinner, Izuku went to his room to study, only to find himself unable to concentrate. He wasn't worried about the exams, but he was definitely thinking about them. Ultimately, he decided to skip studying for the night and just sleep on it. A known hideout. Are these the goods? They look like they're missing some. Yes, sir. We've had a run-in with the Red Arrow lately. Them again, huh? Well, no matter. Once we get these drags on the streets, chaos will surely be inevitable. Izuku woke up that morning feeling rather nervous. He went through his morning routine, put on his uniform, and packed the tracksuit he decided to wear for the exams. Realizing he had 30 minutes to spare, he decided to have breakfast and drink a cup of coffee. He was never a coffee person, but today he thought it would be better to have some. He would need all the energy he could get. He still had some insecurities about being quirkless, but the real reason for his worries right now was his lack of information. The only thing he knew about the exams was the written portion. He had prepared for every possible contingency the day before: bomb arrows, normal arrows, smoke grenades, knives, daggers, and many more gadgets and weapons. He was practically armed to the teeth. The utility belt he made was really useful. And, of course, he didn't forget to bring his bow with him. He felt happy looking at his rather flashy bow that had a light green color. Flashback. Oliver, well, here it is, your bow. Izuku, isn't it a bit too flashy? Wouldn't black have been better? It blends with the shadows. Oliver, you're a hero, not a vigilante. Heroes should be flashy. Izuku, well, okay if you say so. Thanks, Oliver. Izuku was about to take the bow, but Oliver tightened his grip. Huh. Oliver, Izuku. This bow is still clean. I've taken many lives with mine. I know you won't do it, but don't follow my path. Izuku, of course. You know I won't, right? Oliver, smiling, I know you won't. Flashback. Deciding he had killed enough time, Izuku got up, took his backpack, and said goodbye to his mother. Izuku, do your best, his mother said, her radiant smile hiding the tears in her eyes. Izuku looked back and smiled, replying, You know I will. Okay, this is it. Izuku said to himself while walking past the gate. The exam building was rather huge, but looking at all the other students, Izuku felt a sense of belonging. Get out of my way. Izuku heard as he. There was only one person who could say that with such loudness and intensity. Hey, Kaken, let's do our best, Izuku said, but Katsuki ignored him. Sigh, same old Kaken. Izuku was about to enter when someone bumped into him. I'm sorry, the girl said. Due to the impact, the girl lost her balance and was about to fall until Izuku caught her. However, her bag was open, and its contents scattered across the floor. Being the good guy he was, Izuku helped pick up the scattered items and return them to their owner. Thank you very much, she said, bowing her head. No problem at all, he replied. I'm Uraraka Ochako, nice to meet you, she said with a radiant smile. Likewise, I'm Midoriya Izuku. I was really nervous for the exams that I didn't see you, Uraraka admitted, a blush creeping onto her face that made Izuku's heart race. I'm nervous too, so it's fine. But be careful, okay? It would be unfortunate to fall down on a day like this, Izuku said, motioning for her to go ahead. Right, I'll be careful, Uraraka replied, walking ahead after thanking him once more from a slight distance. After a few moments, Izuku decided to head inside as well. More than 500 applicants were present in the exam room after the written test. Everything was going smoothly until he found himself seated next to Katsuki, which didn't bother him too much. What caught Izuku's attention was their proctor, the pro-hero present Mike. He felt his inner fanboy bubbling up again as he gazed at him with sparkling eyes. Welcome, everybody. Everyone say hey. Present Mike exclaimed, but to his dismay, the room fell silent. After explaining the rules and mechanics of the exam, A boy named Tenya Ida stood up to ask a question about a misprint and also insulted Izuku for his mumbling. Looks like no matter how much training I go through, my mumbling quirk will never go away, Izuku thought to himself. These extra robots are 0-pointers. You can take them down, but it's best to avoid them. They're like distractors in a video game, the proctor continued. At that point, everyone had already devised their own strategies. I see, the pointed robots are easy to destroy. I have a couple of grenades and bomb arrows, but those 0-pointers might be quite troublesome. It's probably best to avoid them. After registering his weapons, Izuku went to the locker room to change. By the time he was done, Izuku was almost fully equipped. He refused to put a smoke bomb between his teeth like Oliver suggested. Looking at himself in the mirror, he wore his utility belt over his sweatpants, his quiver on his back, and military boots that Oliver had given him. There was only one thing he could say: "Wow, I look cool." He was almost tempted to strike poses in front of the mirror, but seeing as there were other people in the locker room, he quickly dismissed the thought and headed straight to the field. There were many other participants, but not as many as before. He remembered that they were divided into different fields, which explained why Katsuki wasn't there. Everyone was preparing and stretching, so he decided to do the same while searching for anyone familiar. He spotted Uraraka. "Uraraka-san?" he called, walking toward her to say hi. "You shouldn't disturb her. It looks like she's trying to concentrate," a voice warned from behind. Izuku instinctively turned, nearly reacting with a judo flip. Who grabbed someone's shoulder from behind like that? He thought, before turning back. "I apologize," Izuku said with a wry smile, stepping back to his place. He really didn't want to start anything with the guy. Besides, he was right, she did look busy. Moments later, everyone gathered to start the exams. "This is it," Izuku thought, readying himself with his bow already loaded. "Start!" Present Mick's voice echoed across the field, prompting everyone to quickly start running around, hunting for points. Izuku had already scoped out the area after talking with Ida, so he knew the best vantage point for aiming his arrows. He quickly shot an arrow connected to a rope to the top of a building and began to climb. Once he reached the top, he saw 4 robots. 2 were engaged in a fight, while the other 2 were idly walking around. He decided to target the idle ones, not wanting to steal points from someone else. Izuku leapt from building to building until he reached his first target. He fired his first bomb arrow, aiming for the robot's spider legs, and the second arrow at what he guessed was its head. He paused for a moment to confirm if it had gone down. Boom! He ducked to avoid debris from the explosion. Must have hit a gas tank or something. After recovering, he quickly fired a zip-line arrow to the building across the street to reach his next target. The 2 robots were of the same type, so he took down the other one in the same manner, this time not pausing to wait for another explosion. "Looks like that's 3 points for me since the other one was a 2-pointer, Izuku confirmed by looking at the numbers painted on the sides. On to the next one. As Izuku was about to head into the next alleyway, a loud crash suddenly occurred. "What the heck was that?" he exclaimed, zipping closer to investigate. A 0-pointer was wreaking havoc on a 2-lane road. A 0-pointer? That's too big for an exam, isn't it? He had figured out beforehand that the 0-pointers would serve as distractions and obstacles, but this was taking it too far. "I guess that works as a distractor too, everyone's already getting out of the way. I should probably move too." Huh. Izuku heard a small groan and quickly searched for the source of the sound, eventually finding someone trapped under the rubble. "Wait, that person is?" Without hesitation, Izuku used a grappling hook to descend from the building he was on. He rushed to where she was and tried to lift the rubble off her leg. The girl struggled to speak. "It's okay, I'll get you out of here. HNNGGG. Let's go." Getting the rocks off was easy, but carrying her and escaping was another challenge. The robots seemed to notice them. "Tisich looks like it's after us," Izuku said, looking around for help, but to his dismay, no one was there. "Looks like everyone already ran away. I can't run and carry her at the same time, and this thing is after us with no alleyway to escape to. Looks like there's no other choice," Izuku said as he gently set Uraraka down against the nearest lamppost. Uraraka-san, your legs are probably injured, so stay here. I'll handle this. With that, Izuku sprinted into the fog of dust, missing Uraraka's shout of, "Wait a minute. I'm about to fight a 50-foot-tall robot. Oliver never taught me how to take on a giant robot, but hey, plus ultra, right?" Izuku pulled out another bomb arrow, drawing it back with determination. It's a humanoid robot, so it should have the same weaknesses as a large opponent. He finally spotted his target, the knees. He shot 2 consecutive arrows at the joints, causing a massive explosion that brought the robot crashing down into a kneeling position. The robot, still trying to retaliate, swung its arm at Izuku. He readied himself and jumped just in time, narrowly avoiding the attack. Seizing the moment, he dashed up the robot's arm and climbed to its head. The robot was momentarily stunned from the missed punch. Izuku quickly dropped about 13 time bombs that looked like small marbles. He then leaped from the head to the street below, turning midair to fire 3 bomb arrows at once, triggering the explosions before the time bombs went off. Izuku watched in awe as the giant robot fell, its head detached and crashing onto the street. I actually did it. His moment of victory was short-lived as he remembered he only had 3 points. He needed to hurry, but he couldn't just leave a girl with injured legs behind. He wasn't doing too well himself. His ankle was sprained from his earlier landing due to the explosion. Sigh, Izuku decided. Hey, Uraraka-san, are you all right? He walked towards her. Uraraka noticed him and tried to sit up straight, needing Izuku's assistance. I'm fine, but how about you? You need to get points, right? You need to hurry. Izuku smiled a little at her concern. He had never really had anyone worry about him except for his mom and recently Oliver. Nah, it's okay. Besides, there's not enough time anymore. As if on cue, both of them turned to the entrance just in time to hear Present Mike announce, "Time's up." Izuku looked back at Uraraka and said, "See?" He smiled, trying to reassure her that he was fine. However, Uraraka looked like she was about to cry. "I'm sorry, because of me you had to." Izuku panicked for a moment, thinking, what would Oliver say? But then he reconsidered. Scratch that, what would Oliver not say? Uraraka-san, I told you it's fine, didn't I? Besides, don't you have something else to say? Uraraka looked confused. Huh. Izuku smiled as he encouraged her. I'm not asking for it, but you shouldn't say sorry to the person who helped you. Instead, shouldn't you say something like... He trailed off, hinting at her to say the words. It took her a moment, but when she realized, she quickly said, Alright, thank you for helping me back there. She bowed her head, and he replied with a warm, You're welcome, accompanied by a smile. Also, what kind of hero would I be if I didn't help someone in need? Now come on, let's get your legs treated. Izuku knelt down, offering her a piggyback ride. That's fine. I can walk on my own. Uraraka protested, blushing. Nonsense. What kind of guy lets a cute and injured girl walk on her own? By now, Uraraka's face was as red as a tomato, and she reluctantly accepted his offer. Izuku gave her a radiant smile, one that reminded him of the warmth his mom showed him every day. It took him a moment to realize how charming he must have sounded. Ugh, maybe Oliver is rubbing off on me. After being treated by Recovery Girl, Izuku and Uraraka said their goodbyes, with her expressing her gratitude for the 10th time. Izuku realized there was no way he could pass with just 3 points. The old him would have been a sobbing mess, but surprisingly, he felt calm and somewhat satisfied. Win or lose, he was going to tell Oliver about it, so he decided to run straight to the secret base in hopes of finding him. Izuku felt a rush of excitement as he opened the door to the hideout, but his grin quickly turned to horror and shock. The base was in ruins. Bullet marks and arrows, both red and green, were scattered across the walls. Even the most oblivious person would recognize the signs of a struggle. Oliver! Anyone! Izuku shouted at the top of his lungs, hoping for a response. He got his answer when he heard a cough nearby. Izuku sprinted toward the sound, only to find Roy, Red Arrow, beaten on the floor, blood trickling from his mouth. Roy-senpai! I'm here! Izuku said, assessing Roy's injuries while planning how to help him. Izuku. Izuku. Listen, Roy struggled to speak. They have him. Have who? They have Oliver. What? It had been 2 days since the exam and Oliver's kidnapping, and they still hadn't found the kidnappers. Diggle and Black Canary were still investigating, while Izuku was left frustrated, sharpening his arrows. Anyone who knew Izuku would hesitate to say he was the same person right now. He was seething with rage and anger not just at the people responsible for hurting Roy and kidnapping Oliver, but also at himself. If only I had been there. Then maybe, just maybe. The door behind Izuku suddenly opened, but he didn't pay it any mind and continued sharpening. I think that arrow's sharp enough, Izuku, a stern yet caring voice pulled him from his thoughts. Oh, Laurel Nache on your back? Izuku said, welcoming back his big sister figure. Laurel, aka Black Canary, had always helped him with his training and studying, essentially becoming a big sister to him. He managed a brief smile before looking down again, lost in his thoughts. Laurel quickly noticed Izuku's troubled expression. She placed her belongings on a nearby table and sat down beside him, gently placing a hand on his shoulder in an attempt to console him. What happened wasn't your fault. Stop blaming yourself. There was nothing any of us could have done, she said, hoping to lift his spirits. Izuku, however, was in a fog of confusion. Normally, he kept his thoughts to himself, but right now, he couldn't hold back. But there was, he exclaimed, his voice rising, causing Laurel to flinch and withdraw her hand. We should have seen this coming. Oliver is being hunted by both villains and heroes. We could have prepared. Something. His voice trembled as tears threatened to spill from his eyes, but he held them back when he noticed Laurel was in a similar state. I know, Izuku, Laurel replied, her voice cracking as well. Every time something happens, Oliver always manages to find a way out. I guess we grew complacent because of that and didn't consider the possibilities. Izuku felt a pang of guilt for raising his voice as he saw tears streaming down Laurel's face. Of course, she loved Oliver. She would be upset too. She was probably trying to stay strong for his sake. He moved closer and wrapped his arms around her in a comforting hug. I'm sorry for shouting, he said softly. Laurel was taken aback at first but quickly returned the embrace. I'm sorry for losing my cool too, she replied, only to be met with a teasing remark. It's okay, I know that emotions can run high when it comes to someone you care about. Laurel playfully pinched Izuku's cheeks. You don't get to tease older people like that, mister. They both shared a light laugh, and in that moment, they truly felt like siblings. They enjoyed the Chinese takeout dinner that Laurel had brought, and despite his earlier mood, Izuku found it quite tasty. They chatted as they waited for Diggle to return with information. I don't have too many connections, so I could only bring the police evidence I got from the precinct, Laurel informed him. Izuku had expected as much. The police likely didn't have much information to begin with. But Diggle called and said he got some intel from the Russian mob. Who knows where they got it, but information is information. We can't complain, she added. Izuku nodded in agreement. If anyone knew something, it would be them. Just then, Diggle arrived, carrying a briefcase that Izuku assumed held his gear. I got the information, Diggle said, placing the case on the table and sitting in Felicity's chair. He plugged a flash drive into the computer, revealing a series of security camera footages. Felicity hacked every camera in the city to get these, he explained. As expected, hacking security cameras was second nature to Felicity. The videos showed an old model van moving from place to place. According to the Russian mob, this van was seen months ago as a getaway vehicle for an incident caused by the League of Villains. Izuku clenched his fist at the mention of the villain group. This van was seen driving from a street near us to this location. We're not sure, but it's likely connected to them. I don't know their purpose, but we have to get Oliver out of there. We're heading out tomorrow night, and Thea will be with us. Laurel and Izuku both nodded in understanding. As Izuku prepared to return to his gear, Diggle suddenly caught his attention. Izuku, you're not coming with us. You're staying here. At those words, Izuku felt his world tilt. Why not? Do you think I'll just get in the way or something? he protested, raising his voice. Not at all, but I'm sure Oliver wouldn't approve of you going. He wants you to be a hero, after all. We need to protect you, Diggle explained. Izuku glanced at Laurel and saw her expression mirrored Diggle's sentiments. He took a deep breath, realizing there was no point in arguing. All right, fine, he said reluctantly, looking down. Thank you for understanding, Laurel said, gently stroking Izuku's hair. He returned to his table, continuing his work, but unbeknownst to the adults, a determined expression was forming on his face. At 1:30 a.m., Izuku gathered his gear, donning a dark hoodie along with his gloves and boots for better movement. He glanced around the nightclub Arrow Cave, feeling uneasy about taking risks, but some things were unavoidable. Tonight would end one of two ways: either he would rescue Oliver or he would fail trying. He had no intention of failing. I'm sorry guys, but I have to do this. Izuku stood atop the building across from the one where Oliver was held. Clenching his fists in frustration, he gazed at the run-down structure, realizing that letting his anger take over wouldn't help him save Oliver. He needed to stay calm. Taking a moment to breathe deeply, he began to formulate a plan. Every entrance to the building is guarded. There's no easy way in. Going through the windows or back door would be just as obvious as storming the front. After searching thoroughly, he finally spotted an opportunity. The rooftop has only 3 guards, and there's an air vent behind them. If I can take them out, I can use the vent to get inside. The guards looked like ordinary humans, except for one with a spiky tail. They were armed with military-grade rifles and handguns. If they're relying on guns, their quirks must be weak or better suited for ranged combat. I can take my chances and rush the roof. Taking a deep breath, Izuku fired an arrow attached to a zipline. The nearest guard, stunned by the sudden attack, barely had time to react before Izuku delivered a swift kick to his face. The other 2 guards quickly turned to respond, but Izuku shot 2 taser arrows, hitting them simultaneously. Electricity coursed through their bodies as they collapsed. So far, so good, Izuku muttered, carefully opening the vent and crawling inside. The vent was narrow but just wide enough for him to maneuver. Okay, I'm in, but I still don't know which room Oliver is in. Realizing he needed to check multiple rooms, he began inspecting every vent opening he could find. After checking 5 vents, he found a clue. That's Oliver's robotic arm. He must be nearby. Izuku jumped down and approached the arm resting on a table. A pained expression crossed his face as he imagined what might be happening to Oliver. Just as he was about to leave for more clues, a voice called out, "Lost, kid?" Izuku turned quickly, realizing he had been careless. He barely dodged a sword aimed at his eye, instinctively switching his bow to his sword arm, ready for a close fight. The man was several feet taller, wearing a black tank top and skinny jeans, but Izuku focused on the crimson blade in his hand. Before he could analyze further, another slash came at him. He dodged and swept the man's legs, causing him to fall. As the man hit the ground, Izuku prepared to deliver a finishing blow, but his instincts warned him to move back just in time to avoid a barrage of crimson spikes that shot from the man's chest. "You're pretty fast, kid," the man said, getting back to his feet. Izuku stood up as well, realizing the man could control his own blood. "So you can shape it into different forms, huh?" he commented. "Oh, what gave it away?" the man chuckled, forming a second sword in his other hand. "Why aren't you calling for your friends?" Izuku asked, trying to buy time to think of a strategy. "I don't like sharing my meals," the man replied. "Well, aren't you greedy?" Izuku shot back. They charged at each other, weapons clashing. Izuku feigned an attack, spinning around to get behind the man. The man didn't have time to react before Izuku stabbed him with a tranquilizer arrow. Within moments, the man was out cold. "This guy was strong," Izuku said, feeling a sharp pain in his side. "Darn it," he cursed, applying pressure to the wound. "I couldn't dodge it completely." He rummaged through his backpack for bandages. "It didn't hit any organs, but if I lose too much blood, I'll pass out. I can't let that happen." He wrapped his wound tightly, but things were getting worse by the minute. Just then an alarm blared. Izuku had never been one to panic, and he wasn't about to start now. Grabbing his bow, he tried to return to the vents, but two armed men burst into the room. "It's the intruder! Get him!" they shouted. Realizing he had no choice but to fight, he quickly loaded and fired his bow, taking down one of the men. The other opened fire, but Izuku was quick on his feet, toppling a metal table for cover. After a barrage of bullets, the man paused to reload. Seizing the opportunity, Izuku threw a smoke bomb in front of him. The smoke quickly filled the room, blinding the man. Without hesitation, Izuku delivered a knockout blow to the criminal's head, rendering him unconscious. Emerging from the smoke-filled room, Izuku resumed his search for Oliver, only to find himself in the worst possible situation. He was surrounded, guns pointed at him from every direction. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and no way out. It was truly a dire outcome. Izuku stared blankly at the ground, his adrenaline fading and the pain from his wounds returning. He winced as the deafening sound of the alarm echoed in the background. "Am I going to die here?" he thought, continuing to gaze at the floor. Suddenly, a voice broke through his thoughts, snapping him back to reality. Well, I thought I had already captured the arrow," a man wearing a witch doctor's mask said. "Perhaps an apprentice?" Izuku remained silent, trying to keep his composure despite the dire situation. "Not talking, huh? Fair enough. Guards, take care of him," the man ordered, sending a chill down Izuku's spine. "So, I really am going to die," he thought, accepting his fate. "Sorry, Mom, I'm going ahead." He imagined how heartbroken she would be if he didn't make it, hoping she would eventually move on. He also thought of one more person he wanted to apologize to. "Sorry, Oliver, I couldn't get you out. Don't worry though, Diggle will be here tomorrow, and he'll definitely rescue you." Just then, a gunshot rang out directly in front of him. In that split second, Izuku saw the bullet slowly approaching, and his life flashed before his eyes, both the good and the bad memories. He wished he could create more memories. But amidst the chaos, he noticed something else nearby, waves of electricity gathering around him. Something was happening, and it had to be a quirk, he concluded. He could barely see, but he noticed someone taking down all the criminals in an instant. The next thing he knew, he found himself in a nearby alleyway. Izuku had no idea what had just happened. One moment he was facing death, and the next he was in this alley. He staggered, recalling the past few seconds. "Whoa, easy there. You all right?" a voice called to him. Looking up, Izuku recognized the man in front of him. He had been a hero fanboy for as long as he could remember, and despite the changes he had undergone, he never forgot his past hobby. "Fire. The pro-hero Flash," he mumbled, pointing at the man. "Heh," the man known as Flash chuckled, placing a reassuring hand on Izuku's shoulder. "And you must be Izuku, Oliver's student." Izuku felt a mix of emotions, bleeding, bruised, and beaten, both physically and mentally. Not only had he failed to rescue Oliver, but he had also almost lost his life in the process. A flood of thoughts and regrets filled his mind, accompanied by pain, anger, and fear, which escaped as a series of murmurs. Hey! Izuku jolted back to reality, as if a spell had been lifted, hearing Flash call out to him. "Hey, you okay?" Izuku was still breathing heavily but nodded, managing to stand despite feeling dizzy. Flash steadied him by holding his shoulders. "Whoa, take it easy, Izuku." "You know who I am?" Izuku asked, confused. "Yeah, I'm a friend of Oliver's." Hearing Oliver's name reminded Izuku of why he was there in the first place, sending him into a panic. "Oliver. That's right. They still have him," he exclaimed, trying to drag himself back toward the building. "I have to rescue him." "Whoa, hey. You almost got killed back there. And now you want to go back?" Flash exclaimed. "I'm the only one who can," Izuku said, but then he collapsed to the ground, fainting from exhaustion. Flash rushed to Izuku's side, preparing to carry him back to safety. "Sheesh, quite the kid you raised here, Oliver," he muttered before speeding away with Izuku. Meanwhile, in another location, a man wearing a medieval doctor mask interrogated Oliver. "Listen, Mr. Queen, we don't need much. We only want the place and the person you entrusted the child to." "You expect me to tell you?" Oliver retorted defiantly. The masked man looked disappointed and snapped his fingers. Ag! Oliver tried to hold back his scream as the electric chair was activated. Panting heavily, he added, "I've had better torture sessions than this, you know?" The masked man walked behind Oliver. "That little girl holds a very special power, a power that I need. So please, Mr. Queen, just tell me and we'll let you go." "You think I'll fall for that?" "You're underestimating my resolve," Oliver replied, looking the man directly in the eyes. "When I get out of here you're going to regret this." Seeing that the interrogation was going nowhere, the masked man decided to end the session for the day. "Oh, by the way, a small arrow paid us a visit today. An apprentice, perhaps?" he said as he walked out of the room. Oliver immediately realized it was Izuku. That idiot wouldn't make such a rookie mistake. Back at the arrow cave, everything was hazy as Izuku opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was an 4-pack hanging above him. "Am I in the hospital? No, that doesn't make sense." Slowly, he sat up, trying to regain full consciousness. Nothing felt right. Both mentally and physically, everything was 10 times more painful now that the adrenaline had left his body. He remembered what Flash had said. He was right, I almost died back there. And to top it all off, the enemy now knows we have their location. I'm such an idiot. "Well, at least you're right about something today," a voice interrupted his thoughts. Izuku turned his attention to the man approaching him. "Diggle." Izuku looked down, searching for words, but nothing came. He remained silent. "What you did back there was very reckless, young man. Not only did you compromise your safety, but Oliver's as well. You know that, right? You're a smart kid." Izuku gritted his teeth as the reality of his mistakes became painfully clear. His eyes clenched as tears streamed down his face. "I'm sorry, I was stupid. I couldn't hold back my emotions and I endangered Oliver even more." Izuku struggled to apologize clearly, but the tears kept flowing, making it harder to speak. They both waited for Izuku to calm down a little so he could express himself more clearly. "I just wanted to rescue him so badly that I couldn't stop myself from going there, even though deep down I knew I couldn't do it." Izuku wiped his tears and looked at Diggle with determination. "I'm sorry. It won't happen again. Looks like there was no need for me to scold you. The beating already did that for me." Diggle smiled as he leaned down to Izuku's eye level. "Emotions are powerful, but the way you use them was like shackles. They hold you back." He pointed at Izuku's chest. "But when you keep them all here, that's when you create a powerful weapon." Izuku nodded, seeing Diggle in a new light. It seemed he had more than one teacher here. Today was a day for lectures and scolding, although the talk with Diggle ended quite quickly. "Speaking of fast, Diggle, where's the Flash?" "Oh, he left a while ago. Technically, he wasn't supposed to be there at all, but we had no choice but to call him." Izuku couldn't believe he had met the Flash, the fastest man alive, believed to be faster than even All Might himself. That reminded him. Why did he know my name? "Well, Oliver and he go way back. That's all I can tell you for now." Izuku was surprised that a vigilante like Oliver would be friends with a hero like the Flash. "But right now, I want you to prepare yourself for quite a scolding because unless I'm mistaken, I think that's Laurel's car outside," Diggle said as he looked at the monitors. "Oh no," was all Izuku could think. "Don't worry, you'll get a hug afterward, but for now, you gotta steel yourself." Izuku swallowed as he awaited the storm that was about to be unleashed. Here we go. It took so long as expected. But yay, I did it, go me. Anyway, thanks for reading. Leave an upvote if you found it great. If not, well, just leave it blank, I guess. Thanks for reading, and I'll be back in a few. See ya, smiley face. It's been a week since I broke into the facility where Oliver was held, and I've been reflecting on my actions for the past 6 days while looking at the aftermath. Not only did I get hurt, but I also compromised the plan to rescue Oliver. The facility is now empty, and we've assumed they've moved to a more remote location. I can still feel Laurel shouting at me and pinching my ear. Now that I think back on it, there's no way they'd kill Oliver if they need the information he has, and I have a feeling Oliver would never crack. I'm still worried, but I've decided to stay out of the fray for now. I didn't really get to tell Oliver how I did on the test. I wish I could. I would have told him that I only scored less than 5 points. I can imagine his outrage at that information. The entrance exam felt like a decade ago with everything that happened in just a few days, but life goes on, and here I am, waiting for the mail to tell me that I failed in a heavily sugar-coated version, of course. Why am I even waiting? I said as I got up to the fridge to get some cola, but just as I was about to take a step toward the kitchen, the doorbell rang. I was looking forward to that sugary drink too. Seeing as there was no other way around this, I made my way to the door and opened it, only to be met by a man wearing a blue vest carrying a big bag of letters. "Hey, looking for Mr. Izuku," he said, looking at me with a knowing expression. "Yeah, that's me," I replied as I signed for the deal. I then thanked him and said goodbye, to which he tipped his cap in farewell. What arrived? "Come on, Izuku, you can march into a den full of criminals, but you can't open a letter?" Having said that, I proceeded to stare at the letter for around 15 minutes. After an extra 5 minutes of pure silence, I ripped the letter open to reveal a bracelet-like device that created a hologram of All Might. I was dumbfounded as I listened to All Might's entrance. As expected of All Might, he had a lot of charisma. For a few seconds, I just listened, waiting for the moment he would say, "Sorry, but you did not pass the exams," like I was expecting him to. But it never came. Instead, I was shown footage of that girl Uraraka begging to share her points with me. The scene made me tear up, to think she'd be willing to share her points with me. Then there was that one moment, "Welcome to your hero academia." Tears flowed from my eyes. I did it. I made it. Minute, Oliver, why did you have to get kidnapped? I wish I could tell you about this. After a while, I noticed an extra piece of paper inside the envelope. Thank goodness I didn't tear it. It was the schedule and subjects I was supposed to attend. Let's see, Class 1B? Oh, so I'm in the second hero class. Well, I suppose I should be thankful for even getting in. I stood up and faced the mirror. This is what Oliver would have wanted. Then, as a way to pump myself up, I put my arms in the air and shouted at full power, "I'm gonna do my best." As expected, though, 2 of our neighbors came to complain later. Unknown location. It's dark, cold, and I haven't eaten in days, and thanks to these interrogations, I'm covered in bruises. But that's nothing I can't handle. I've been through worse, after all. It seems they still haven't noticed that this is a prosthetic arm. Good thing I wore the silicone-coated one. Now then, how should I get out? The HNDCFFS were no problem. I escaped an hour ago simply by dislocating a few bones and popping them back. The windows are too high up, and there are no air vents large enough for me. Looks like the only way out is that door. The next interrogation will be my chance to escape, I thought, though I still had no idea where we were. We had just moved from the first location thanks to Izuku's rescue attempt, and the lack of information about the enemy's quirks was a significant disadvantage. I doubted they would exceed level 3 quirks, except for that masked guy. He felt dangerous. Just as I was lost in thought, the door swung open. A man with scales entered, carrying a bag. Whatever's in there is probably a weapon of sorts. Now I just need to wait for my chance. Well, if it isn't Oliver Queen. You probably know why I'm here, right? He said, opening his bag and pulling out a pair of gloves. I'm a bit foggy on the details, but maybe you're here to let me go? I replied, trying to keep my composure. Very funny, Mr. Queen. Maybe this will jog your memory, he said before delivering a hard punch to my face. I'm surprised. Didn't think those arms could throw a punch, I retorted, shaking off the pain. But if you do that again, I'm going to make you regret it. Well, you're welcome to try. He threw another fist, but I dodged at the last second and slipped behind him as he struggled to regain his balance. In that brief moment, I seized the opportunity. Told you so, I said as his body hit the floor with a thud. Now then, I hope you at least brought a gun. I reached into the bag, but instead of a knife or a gun, I found something familiar. Well, aren't you poetic, planning to use my own weapon against me? Amuse. The fool had actually brought a bow, a quiver full of arrows, and a phone. The bow looked commercial, but it would have to do. The arrows were perfect. The phone had battery but no signal. We must be underground or in an area with no reception. In any case, I needed to escape this place incognito and get as far away as possible. That was the plan, but it wasn't realistic. Guards were probably everywhere, not to mention that masked guy was likely still around. It looked like I would have to sneak my way out and eventually fight my way through. It had been a while, but let's see if I could still pull off the old trick. Somewhere in the building, 5 guards were in the same room, alternating between walking and sitting. 3 of them had visible quirks, while the others were more dangerous since their quirks were unknown. Let's end this quickly before they get the chance, I said as I shot an arrow at the lights. The arrow struck the lights, causing them to flicker on and off. Let's party! I dove into action, knocking 2 guards down with a double kick. I blocked another's knife and redirected the blade toward his neck. The next guard launched his spines at me. I dodged most of them, but a few hit me. Unfortunately for him, my arrows were sharper than his spines. I shot an arrow straight through his heart. 1 last guard remained, and he seemed to be their leader, as his quirk was much stronger. Hydrokinesis, this was going to be a challenge. I quickly shot an arrow at his head, but a small amount of water redirected it, causing it to miss. He then unleashed a torrent of water at me at bullet speed, but I had just enough time to hide behind some metal crates. He wasn't trained in his quirk and didn't fully know how to utilize it, huh? I grabbed the jacket of a nearby body and threw it to my left. As expected, he shot at it with everything he had. Simultaneously, I emerged from the right side and fired my arrow, hitting him in the stomach. He panicked, twisting and fearing for his life. I approached him, aiming an arrow at his head to hasten his end. But to ensure he never forgot, even in death, I had to leave a message. You have all failed this city. Quirkless was a term referring to a person without powers, and while I am a quirkless individual, I would never call myself powerless. I've worked hard to get to where I am, and I will stand for it even if it costs me everything. I am strong because I was once weak, but I can't say the same about my current classmates. Class B was filled with individuals boasting impressive quirks. While they might not be as strong as Kaken, they were still formidable. They probably all expected to be placed in Class A. The atmosphere had been heavy since I entered the classroom. Friend groups were forming as usual, but conversations revolved around, we should have been in Class A, or Class A isn't that great anyway. I remained quiet, sitting in my favorite spot, the 3rd seat from the back, positioned perfectly between the teacher and the rest of the class. I exchanged a few friendly greetings, but nothing that would lead to a real friendship. Well, that's just great, I thought. They were already feeling down about not being as good as they believed. Just wait until they found out a quirkless person was among them. As my thoughts spiraled, a large muscular man in a red suit entered the classroom and began organizing his paperwork on the teacher's desk. Over the past few months, I had managed to keep my fanboy tendencies in check, but sometimes it was impossible. Wow, it's the pro hero Vlad. Most students didn't have pro heroes as teachers, so it was understandable that everyone was impressed. I smiled as the mood in the room lifted slightly. Truly, being a hero is more than just fighting. It's about inspiring others. Oliver always told me that a vigilante lacks this quality, which is why I'm here to take on the name Arrow and ensure everyone feels safe at its mention. Alright, good morning everyone, and welcome to UA. I listened as Vlad introduced himself and outlined the course. Everything was going smoothly until he announced, each one of you will introduce yourselves here. Great, not my favorite part of class. Despite my nerves, I took notes on everyone's quirks during their introductions. Whoa, he can copy quirks. That's impressive, but I guess I understand why he didn't score too high on the entrance exam. He's basically quirkless against the robots, but he could have just copied others around. Midoriya Izuku. My thoughts were interrupted as Vlad called my name in a way that left no room for hesitation. Instinctively, I stood up and made my way to the front. My name is Izuku Midoriya. I paused briefly to prepare for the reactions that would follow, then decided to go for it. My quirk is... well, I don't have one. The class fell silent. Was the laugh necessary? It lingered for a moment until some of the guys in the back began whispering. As I returned to my seat, I caught snippets of their conversation. "Ah man, we're in the same class as a quirkless guy, which means we're on the same level. That's depressing." I expected that reaction. It was best not to dwell on it for now. The day passed like any first day at school, and soon it was time to pack up and head home. Tomorrow would be the real challenge with practical training ahead. The day had been nothing I hadn't anticipated, just a typical first day until I turned a corner and encountered another pro hero, but not just any hero, the #1 hero, All Might. Might. I murmured softly as our eyes met. My admiration for him hadn't faded. I was still a fan, just not as intensely as before. He radiated a sense of safety. "Young Midoriya, good afternoon. How was your first day?" he asked, just like any teacher would. I responded as any student would. "It was fine, sir, but I really should get going." I didn't realize my tone was a bit colder than intended. I didn't harbor any dislike for him. In fact, I still idolized him. I suppose his earlier words had affected me more than I wanted to admit. I bowed my head and started to walk away, but just as I was about to go too far, All Might called out to me. "Young Midoriya." I turned back to face the symbol of peace, waiting for what he had to say. I was wrong about what I said before. His sudden admission took me by surprise. Though he maintained his smile, I could tell it was slightly off. "I apologize if my words affected you. I realize that my apology may sound insincere, but you have shown me that I have not been living by the motto I always tell others, to go beyond one's limits plus ultra. Despite being quirkless, you are on your way to becoming a hero. I hope you will allow me to teach and guide you to become the hero you are meant to be." Touching, there was no other word for it. The most powerful man in the world was here, apologizing to a quirkless kid. Was there any reason not to forgive him at this point? Of course not. Why would there be? A few tears slipped from my eyes as I smiled back and began to speak. "It's fine, don't worry about it," I said, returning his smile. He gave me a thumbs up and a nod before I finally made my way home. I had told my mom earlier that I was staying at Oliver's, also known as the Arrow Cave. Hopefully, there would be some sort of update on Oliver's whereabouts. The cave was mostly empty, save for one person. "Felicity, you're here. I told you that, nays, it makes me feel old. You better stop it, young man. I'll stop when you stop acting like an older sister." She paused her typing and turned to face me. "Do I really act that old?" "Yeah, just a bit." "Darn, I thought I was hip and cool," she said, turning back to the monitors. Despite her worry for Oliver, it was clear she still believed he was alive somewhere. "You make me feel foolish for what I did." That was foolish. Besides, Oliver survived the island, constant battles with people who have powers, not to mention the League of Assassins. He'll be fine. I envied her unwavering faith that Oliver was okay somewhere. She had always been the most calm yet caring person on the team, well, calm in her own way. I wanted to ask her about any news, but as I was still reflecting, I decided to put it off for later. "So, how was your first time?" I raised an eyebrow at her question. "Not your first time as in romantic? Goodness, you're like 13. I meant your first time at UA. "Oh, that. There she goes again. I wondered if it was on purpose." "Oh, it's been great so far." After a good hour or two of talking and other things, it was finally time to sleep. However, I found myself unable to, so I started maintenance work on my gear to pass the time. I was excited for tomorrow, no doubt about it. Tomorrow, an arrow hits its mark. It had been a month, I guess? I'm really sorry, college has been challenging. With that, I hereby declare that this fanfic will update when I find the time. Don't worry, it comes sooner than you think. Thank you for reading. Please upvote if you liked it, otherwise, just share your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you next time. Bye. On the second day of class, Izuku would have been more excited if it weren't for the feeling of being cast out. No one had come to talk to him. Normally, he wouldn't complain about such things, but come on, it was still the second day. Does no one at least want to know how a quirkless kid got in? He could feel a couple of eyes staring at him, but whether they were curious or not, he couldn't tell. Just as he was about to grab something from his bag, he noticed two people approaching him. "Hey there, Midoriya, right?" Yeah, he replied with a smile. Nice to meet you. The name's Minoma, by the way. Izuku sensed something was off. He could tell this guy had some personality quirks, but he was just glad that at least someone wanted to talk to him. Thanks, you too. And I'm Kendo. Itsuka Kendo. Nice to meet you, Midoriya-san. Likewise, Kendo-san. After shaking hands with both of them, Izuku wanted to ask why they approached him in the first place, but since that might come off as rude, he held back and let them take the lead. So you said you were quirkless, right, Midoriya-san? Minoma asked as he sat down at Izuku's table, which could be considered rude, but Izuku didn't mind. Yeah, that's what the doctor said, he replied, trying to relax by leaning back in his chair. That's truly amazing. How'd you do it though? Oh, just took down a couple of robots, same as you. Oh, come on. There has to be something more than that, right? At this point, almost everyone in class was listening in on the conversation. Izuku couldn't help but tense up. He had a feeling Minoma was about to say something very inappropriate. A few under-the-table dealings here and there, maybe? Everyone's sweat dropped at Minoma's comment. Judging by Kendo's expression, she probably didn't expect this was what Minoma had in mind when he said he wanted to talk to Izuku. Well, that's just great, Izuku thought to himself. And here I thought I was finally going to make friends. Nah, we don't have that kind of money, Izuku tried to play it cool. Oh, then a few connections, maybe? Minoma said with a smug grin. I would have been in Class A if that were the case, right? Izuku retorted. Well, it would have been too obvious if that had happened, right? This guy just doesn't let up with the provocations, and it's starting to annoy me, Izuku thought as he stared him down. Minoma returned the gaze, keeping his grin intact. A heavy tension filled the classroom, and everyone fell silent as they watched the standoff between Izuku and Minoma. Kendo remained quiet for a moment before she thought to defuse the situation, but just then, the teacher walked into the classroom. All right, everyone take a... Vlad paused as he noticed the students were all looking in one direction. What's going on here? Vlad approached the three students at the center of attention. Kendo struggled to find the right words but couldn't say anything that wouldn't worsen the situation. As Vlad assessed the scene, he quickly realized that the quirkless student and the arrogant Minoma were the culprits. He understood what was happening without anyone needing to explain. He really should have addressed this yesterday. Class B probably felt inferior about being placed here, and that feeling was only reinforced when they learned they were at the same level as someone without a quirk. But Vlad felt that a simple explanation wouldn't suffice. No, he needed to show them. Vlad walked up to the front and called for everyone's attention, which they all responded to accordingly. Today, we were supposed to have a basic ability diagnostic test, but since you're all so eager to bump heads, why don't we start with one-on-one combat training? The class buzzed with excitement, except for Kendo, who remained a bit confused by the unfolding events. Minoma and Izuku were forced to temporarily stop what they were doing, and Minoma had to return to his seat. Everyone change into your gym uniforms and meet me at the gymnasium in 10 minutes. At the gymnasium? Alright, let's start with you two, Vlad pointed to Izuku and Minoma. Both of you were eager to go in the classroom before, show me what you've got right here. The rules are simple, no fatal strikes and no severe injuries. All you have to do is knock your opponent out of the line. Of course, you may use your quirk as well. He turned to Izuku. And Midoriya, you're allowed to use your weapons too. Izuku thought for a moment but ultimately decided to go with bare fists. No thanks, sir. I want to stick with the rules for now, Izuku said as he cracked his fingers. Now that is a big mistake, Minoma replied, touching the nearby Tetsu. Don't regret it later. Both of them got into fighting stances as they waited for their teacher's signal. And start. Izuku, quick on his feet, moved first and immediately aimed a right kick at Minoma's head. But Minoma was also quick to react. He activated his quirk, making his skin as hard as metal. Izuku's kick made a clang sound as it hit Minoma's head. Oh, I see you copied his quirk, right? Izuku thought. His legs would have been injured if it weren't for his training in Muay Thai. I figured you would have been a skilled fighter, but no amount of kicks and punches will get through this. Minoma retaliated with a barrage of punches. Oh, you have a point, Izuku said as he dodged all of Monoma's punches with ease. But there's no point in having defense if you want to hit me. Don't underestimate me. Monoma's stance shifted, and suddenly a kick was aimed at Izuku. Switch kick? Izuku ducked just in time, narrowly avoiding a concussion. That was close. But just as Izuku thought he had avoided the attack, Monoma executed a spinning back heel kick with his other leg. Izuku saw it coming but didn't have enough time to dodge. Crap! He had to block the metal leg with his arms, wincing from the impact as he stepped back slightly. That's a surprise, Taekwondo, huh? Izuku returned to his fighting stance despite the painful bruise. Monoma smirked in response, also returning to his stance. Once again, the two teenagers clashed, but this time Izuku couldn't get near. Monoma's flurry of kicks kept him at bay. There's only one way to deal with this, and it's to get close and grapple, Izuku thought as he continued to dodge the kicks by mere inches. Monoma, feeling in control of the fight, became a bit cocky, throwing careless strikes. Izuku noticed this. As Monoma started to do a front kick, Izuku countered by going low and moving his whole body behind a kick while using his hand on the ground for balance, capoeira. The kick landed on Monoma's chin. He still had Tetsu's quirk, so it didn't knock him out, but it did stun him for a moment, giving Izuku enough time to get under him, grab his arm, and send him hurling to the ground with a hip toss. The class was stunned, mouths agape, as they watched Monoma get slammed effortlessly. Kendo was especially ecstatic, her martial artist spirit ignited. Well, that wasn't grappling, but hey, it worked, Izuku thought to himself. The match wasn't over yet, as no one had been knocked out or gone out of line, but Monoma could barely maintain his borrowed quirk anymore and was clearly outmatched in martial arts. Vlad had no choice but to stop the fight. That's enough. Izuku Midoriya wins. Others in the class began cheering while some remained quiet. Izuku approached Monoma, who was still on the ground, and offered him a hand to help him up. You weren't bad at all. You did get a bit cocky though. Monoma was surprised at first but eventually smirked again and took Izuku's hand. You weren't bad yourself, Mr. Quirkless. The two boys found a bit of mutual respect for one another, even as Monoma still felt the sting of defeat. Did they really just come to an understanding by speaking through their fists? Kendo said, a reluctant smile forming. Boys, really? Upon seeing Izuku's skill and capabilities, the vibe of the class shifted. They felt a bit more hopeful. Vlad noticed this and couldn't help but feel relieved. Looks like this turned out for the better after all. Unknown location. What do you mean he escaped? You were dealing with a quirkless man who has been tortured for days. We're sorry, boss, it's just that they were cut off as the masked man dealt with them swiftly. Clean that up. The masked man walked over to the chair where Oliver was tied. Looks like the arrow is as sharp as ever. What's our next move, Overhaul?